So my article today is from Marijuana Moment from Ben Adlin, and it is marijuana company claims DEA review process is unconstitutional in new federal lawsuit. So second lawsuit we're covering this morning. In a new federal lawsuit filed against the leaders of the Department of Justice and the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Rhode Island Cannabis Company is asking the court to prevent an administrative law judge for the agency from reviewing the firm's application to manufacture marijuana for research purposes, calling the matter an unconstitutional proceeding led by an unconstitutional decision maker. MMJ Biopharma Cultivation, Inc. has previously taken legal action against the federal government, filing a petition for a writ of mandamus last year in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit that alleged DEA's years-long licensing application process has hamstrung the company's business and stymied innovation that could benefit patients. The company said it applied to legally grow marijuana for research and development purposes back in 2018, aiming to produce medicine for clinical trials focused on treatment of multiple sclerosis and Huntington's disease, but so far has been unable to secure the necessary approvals. The immediate issue in the new lawsuit is whether an order by the government for MMJ Biopharma to show cause in relation to a manufacturing registration application should go before a DEA administrative law judge. In a 21-page complaint filed on Thursday in U.S. District Court for the District of Rhode Island, the company says it would suffer irreparable harm if it went before the DEA administrative law judge, whom it contends was appointed in violation of the appointment clause of Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution and is not accountable to the president. The Constitution mandates that Article 2 officers, such as the administrative law judge, be appointed either by the president or the head of their department, the Attorney General of the United States, the suit argues. The DEA administrative law judges are appointed by neither. Rather, the administrative law judges presiding over MMJ Biopharma's hearing was selected from a group of candidates provided by the White House Office of Personnel Management and appointed by the DEA administrator upon recommendation from DEA's chief administrative law judge. The suit names as defendants Merrick, DOJ, DEA administrator, and Milligram. I love her last name. I've joked about that before. If you're going to work at the DEA, your last name should not be Milligram. It should be Kilogram. And DEA Administrative Law Judge Therese Walbaum. Neither agency immediately returned Marijuana Moment's request for comment on the suit on Thursday evening. MMJ Biopharma President Dwayne Boise described the situation as horrific. Her office is in the DEA. She gets paid by the DOJ, and she never went through the process to appoint a judge, he told Marijuana Moment. And so here she sits ruling on all these cases. The DEA is law enforcement. They're supposed to uphold the law, not interpret it, Boise said. And there is a federally legal way to do it. We are doing it, and we're still getting blowback. Citing the 2003 Supreme Court decision, Axon versus Federal Trade Commission, the lawsuit says MMJ is entitled to seek relief in this court to address its constitutional challenges to avoid compounding the here and now injury from being subjected to this illegitimate proceeding, a harm that is impossible to remedy once the proceeding is over, and which is when appellate review kicks in. MMJ Biopharma's hearing before the DEA administrative law judge was supposed to kick off April 10th, but following the filing of the federal lawsuit, that matter has temporarily been put on hold as of Friday. While the government in the DEA matter opposed delaying the review, Walbaum, the administrative law judge, wrote that a stay is appropriate in the matter. Respondents' challenges to this tribunal's authority under the Axon, which is now allows federal courts to entertain interlocutory structural challenges, is a sufficiently new issue that makes it challenging to gauge the likelihood of success, she wrote in an order granting MMJ Biopharma's requested stay. More broadly, the company also claims in its lawsuit that the DEA has repeatedly dragged its heels on its application to move forward, alleging the agency failed to submit MMJ Biopharma's application to the Federal Register within a required timeframe and missed other determination deadlines. During a more than 2-year period following the pre-registration DEA investigation, for example, the company's lawyers say MMJ Biopharma was unable to receive an approval or denial via a show cause order of their application. This was almost 5 years from the date of MMJ's initial application. It continues to go on, but I think in the interest of time, we have enough on this article to be able to summarize what the issues are here. And I'd love to hear what Jason and Matthew have to think about this.
Man, I feel like this is good news. I feel like anytime someone's suing the government on behalf of stopping the government from doing anything, I feel like is always good.
Confused all of
What's that, man?
I was like, he said, I get so confused about all of these lawsuits and all this stuff happening. It just continues to end around to, it seems like such an easy fix.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's not, because I've interfaced with, local governments before and enough for public comment and what I thought was a pretty succinct, intelligent, and coherent, couple minute comment, and then have everybody behind the dais look at me like I've got three heads, and then go back to they're just idiot stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to really litigate our way out of this. I think either this entire thing is going to end up just collapsing, or governments are going to get really radically proactive in all of this.
So administrative law judges are a little bit different than, civil or criminal judges.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea that these administrative law judges are not independent of the agencies with which, for which they're ruling upon, makes a lot of sense to me. I think that argument has merit, and I'm not sure that that's the ideal model for getting things done. The other thing that comes up for me is, if you apply for a permit in 2018 and we're rounding into the second quarter of 2024, if the government can't process things quicker than that, no one's ever going to apply. So they stifle participation just by running out the clock. And this isn't new for us in terms of cannabis permissions and approvals. And so we were taught to ask permission, not forgiveness. And if it takes 6+ years and you can't get any permissions, that's not a system that works. It doesn't really support anybody. And there has been ample conversation about how the DEA approved cannabis that is approved for medical research has been at the lowest tier of quality and doesn't represent cannabis that's really out there in communities, and therefore has less research value than if they were using cannabis that is an equivalency to what people are using either in the regulated or unregulated market. So I think this is the thing that's unfortunate for me is, I agree with Jason that lawsuits are great to push back against the government. Mm-hmm. The problem with pushing back against the government with lawsuits is the government then spends taxpayers' money in those lawsuits, and the government has an unlimited pool of taxpayers' money. So all of us pay the cost for these lawsuits, because ultimately our taxes pay for the government to push back and to drag their feet and to litigate and to arbitrate and to mediate. And so I think about the cost of that. And I think that we've touched upon both in the previous article about.
Are you saying that the government shouldn't be able to be sued?
No, what I'm saying is that.
Just want to make sure.
No, I'm saying that's an important tool that we have, but that in that process, the American taxpayer pays for the unlimited pool of resources the government has to dig in and to argue its position. And this is the second article that we've talked about today that include lawsuits, that include the DEA. And I think the DEA is an easy pinata for us to flog.
Yep. It is.
The DEA has an important function. As long as the country is riddled with fentanyl,
mm-hmm.
it
That's what
can be a noble organization that provides a societal benefit. And as long as the only reason why the DEA is in the conversation around cannabis is because of this discrepancy between federal and state laws, then their participation is really a bygone relic of an old era prior to regulated state cannabis programs. And so if there was a way to remove them from the equation so that they could focus on the bigger threats, like Matthew St. Germain talked about, the speed and meth, and what was that city, Paris, you said? There is good work for them to do. I don't want to suggest that organization can't be an effective tool, but not in cannabis. We're way past that. They shouldn't be involved in the conversations and the making of policy or the enforcement of policy, in my opinion.
And Ben LeBone says in the chat, he says litigation pushes the policy needle, and it costs the industry more than the government taxpayer money. Were you gonna say something real quick, Matthew?
Oh no, so not to that comment. No,
Okay,
sir.
fair enough.
I was just saying it's well past time to start triaging the drug problems in America, and really, we need everybody. That's why I think we need more mushrooms. First and foremost, available to all Americans, because one of the things mushrooms do is they get you out of your fear body, connect you to the earth, and connect you to love. A lot of people are dealing with drug problems and the homeless from fear, and they just want death squads and they just want it to disappear. And what we really need to do is we need to start addressing these problems with love, passion, and realizing majority of the people who are homeless and drug users on the streets are orphaned or adopted, or the parents of drug users themselves, or suffered a tremendous amount of physical, psychological, or sexual abuse as children. The only way we're going to stop this drug problem is not to continue to lock people up, not to continue to go after people with enforcement arms, to actually help the end users deal with and assimilate the traumas that they have encountered, gone through in their lives, as well as to educate and train these folks so that they can actually be used. Once somebody is able to do some psychological work and actually feel that they have a use despite whatever victimization that they underwent as a child, that starts to orient them towards the right direction. You give them job training, a job where they don't have to be a serf or a slave, and that they can afford to live inside, they can afford to eat some food and have occasional days off. People want to actually feel good about themselves. People want to feel like they are useful members of society. And I firmly believe that if we get out of our fear body and into our love, start operating and navigating from that position, we could solve a lot of these problems. Instead, the CIA continues to work with the cartels and other governments to funnel drugs into the United States, to attack communities of color, to attack anti-war and anti-corporate movements. DEA is basically a shell game. It's like the curtain in front of the Wizard of Oz. You know, the CIA is the evil wizard. The DEA is this curtain of respectability and veneer. But we all saw that thing that we saw in Narcos. If you guys ever watch Narcos on Netflix, where Kiki Camarena tracks up and up the cartel ladder until he finds a CIA agent who tells him just go away and never mind. That shit's real.
Mm-hmm.
George Bush and the CIA were flying cocaine into Meade, Arkansas. Two young boys saw the planes landing and somehow both fell asleep on a railroad track and got their heads decapitated when a train came by. Bill Clinton was the governor at the time, who was a Rhodes Scholar. Rhodes Scholarships were founded by Cecil B. Rhodes, an industrialist and colonizer, one of the most evil men on the planet. Bill Clinton went from his ties with George Bush and the CIA as governor of Arkansas, allowing the cocaine, and was gifted the presidency. We see how crooked the Clintons have been their entire life. So there's a much deeper current and a much deeper story going here that's not really about stopping the problem. It's about creating an appearance people are trying to stop the problem, spending other people's money, and diverting money into these black budgets of the CIA into the pockets of certain families. Zach.
And on that, we're going to go to commercial. We're going to be right back.